Joining us now is Tom Rosh. He's a teacher, an 8th grade American government teacher at the Falcon Creek Middle School in the Cherry Creek School District. And we've asked him to come on to discuss with us the latest on the so-called teacher tenure bill that is moving through the legislature. There's a big hearing this morning in the Appropriations Committee in the legislature about whether this bill should pass. And one of the things that hasn't come up in this debate, because this debate has revolved around teacher evaluation, is how much is this all going to cost? Is there a cost to this new bill that we haven't really considered and that we don't know about? Tom, thanks for taking the time this morning. So what is your answer to that question? Is this so-called teacher tenure bill going to cost the state a lot of money, or is it, as proponents seem to suggest, almost revenue neutral?
Thanks, David, for having me on here this morning. Yeah, that's one issue that hasn't been discussed very much in this whole process, is this cost issue. And we're actually have been looking into this a little bit more in depth, and we're estimating that this bill is going to cost perhaps into the hundreds of millions of dollars to implement. And, right now, Senator Johnson has a fiscal note attached to this thing of around $247,000, and that's it. And, I think that's a really deceiving number. In fact, that number is just for the increased costs at CDE, what it's going to cost them to hire administrators and stuff to oversee all of this. But in terms of individual districts, the cost is going to be staggering. First of all, in my school, we have about 80 teachers. And I'd say about a quarter of them, or maybe less, are fully evaluated every year. And we have 3 administrators in our building. So, we were looking into this. Okay, well, what's it going to cost for the administrators to fully evaluate all 80 teachers in our building? And at a lowball figure, we figured that if every elementary school in the district had to hire one additional administrator to help out with this, and every middle school had to hire 2 additional administrators, and every high school 3, that the district's going to have to hire about 75 to 80 additional administrators. And that costs, you take in the salaries, which are between $75,000 and $100,000 per administrator. You start looking at benefits. You look at training, technology that administrators require, and then, the other administrative costs like payroll demands and those types of things, because payroll is going to have to cover all of this too. We're looking at probably around $10 to $15 million annually just for the Cherry Creek school district.
And how would a school district like Cherry Creek pay for that right now?
Well, I mean, that's a really good question. I think our legislators need to answer because, as you know, this year the legislature has cut more than $500 million over the next 2 years out of K-12 funding. The other thing that's coming up, too, is Governor Ritter's Chief Education Initiative, the CAP for K program. They're also estimating school districts are going to have to assume that cost over the next 4 years, which is an additional $131 to $142 million. So, obviously schools can't cut kids. So, where this money's going to come from, we're looking, I suppose, cutting more teachers, less money going into the classroom, because really when it comes down to it, the biggest part of a school district's budget is its teachers. So, cutting. So
you can actually, they may actually have to reduce the number of teachers in order to pay the costs of this new evaluation system. Again, on the line with us is Tom Rosh. He's an 8th grade American government teacher at Falcon Creek Middle School. He has been following, and he is on the executive board of the Cherry Creek Education Association, been intimately following the debate over teacher tenure in the legislature. That debate comes to a head today in a key hearing in the Appropriations Committee in the legislature. New questions about how much it will cost to implement this new evaluation system. He's arguing that the costs may be far more astronomical than has even been discussed. And Tom, I have to just ask you, if this is such a big issue, some people will be listening to this and say, this sounds like a desperate attempt. There will be cynics who will say this sounds like a desperate attempt to throw a last-minute wrench into the debate over this. Why hasn't this issue taken more center stage in this debate over teacher tenure up until now?
Well, I think part of it is the way that Senator Johnston is selling this thing. Again, he keeps falling back to saying, okay, the fiscal note is $247,000, and he keeps kind of referring back to that. And he kind of, I think, is avoiding the question a little bit. The other thing is, there's been some superintendents. I know that Superintendent Bossberg from Denver, testified saying, well, hey, this isn't going to cost us very much money to implement. And, what's interesting about that is, Cherry Creek, we developed a really incredible evaluation system almost 4 years or a few years ago. And it took us about 4 years to develop this evaluation system. It's based on Charlotte Daniels and some of her research. And it cost us thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to develop. And really, Cherry Creek has one of the most premier evaluation systems in the country. I think it could serve as a model for what Colorado as a whole should be using. But what was funny about this was that Denver came to us not long afterwards, wanting to see our evaluation system. And in order to offset their costs, Superintendent Bossberg of Denver, who claims that this isn't going to cost them any additional money, actually applied and received $10 million from the Gates Foundation so that they could do the same work in their school district. And people joked, we were joking about that because, hey, we should have charged these guys for coming and taking a look at our stuff. Because they got so much money from the Bill Gates Foundation for it.
Well, we will continue to follow this, and I'm sure you will too. And I think the question about how much all of this costs, a lot of times those questions are sort of swept under the rug, and I think it's definitely important for you to be bringing them up because at a time of such a budget crisis, we need to be asking those questions on everything, especially one of the biggest expenditures we make in this state, which is on education. Tom Rosh, thank you so much for taking the time this morning. And go ahead.
Could I plug one thing? Before you go, we're asking people to contact the members of the House Appropriations Committee today and ask them to conduct an accurate financial assessment of what this bill is going to cost because they have not done this so far. So if people could do that today, we'd appreciate it. There's more information at stop191.com. That's STOP191.com.
And you can find the members of the Appropriations Committee, I assume, linked on that webpage.
Yes, you can.
Okay, and so today is the big hearing in the Appropriations Committee, and I think, frankly, no matter where you come down on the teacher tenure issue, the so-called tenure issue, I know it's the teachers have called it a due process issue. No matter where you come down on this, I do think it is fair to ask the legislature to do an accounting, an audit of how much this is actually going to cost. We saw last week the legislature refused to do that when it comes to corporate tax loopholes. We had the House Majority Leader Paul Weissman on the show about how the legislature refused to pass a bill auditing how much we spend on corporate tax loopholes. And the least they should be doing is just giving us an honest cost estimate on this issue of teacher tenure. Tom, thanks so much for taking the time this morning.
Okay, thank you, David.
It's good talking to you. 7:33 here on AM 760.